Hi friends, welcome back to our channel. Sales is always fun. Did you know we sales professionals are among the least trusted people? We are very low in the graph. You know why? In fact, customers complain that we are very pushy. One of the reasons is that we as salespeople, we have been taught something by the organization. We take it in and go and vomit out the same way to the customer and expect him to buy from us. And we keep following him up and he rather runs away from us. The other issue why customers find us as pushy is that we are not doing our prospecting well. Not doing prospecting well has two impacts. One, probably you're running after the wrong frog, which means that the customer who is not good enough to buy from you, you're probably chasing him. The other sad thing is that customer who can buy your products, you're probably ignoring them. So to ensure that we do the right kind of prospecting and get to the right kind of customer, because not every customer is ours. So we will look at a couple of prospecting methodologies that has been used over the time. Well, the first methodology we'll see is what is known as BANT, B-A-N-T. This was developed by IBM way back in 1960s, which means it's a time-tested, proven methodology. What does BANT stand for? B-A-N-T. B stands for budget, A stands for authority, N is need, and T stands for the timeline. This is BANT. So let's go one by one. What is budget? Budget is very simple. If the customer doesn't have the money to buy, it doesn't work, or probably he's got too high or too less amount, depends how he has budgeted for this thing. Let's put in simple terms. Like a premium car salesperson comes and talks to me about his car, talks his features, benefits, etc., etc. It is nice for me to listen, but do I have the money to buy? No. So he has probably wasted his time. I have also partly wasted my time. So before you talk to when you approach the customer itself, you need to check whether he has got the right kind of money for it. So how do you do that? So we will look into some of the questions that we will do when asking about budgeting. Also, this BANT, you don't have to go in the exact format. Budget, authority, need, timeline. Your questions can be a little this way, that way. Maybe you can check whose authority is you, or you can probably start with the need. So you can work out the way you want it. It is not linear. So some of the questions you can ask when you want to know what the budgeting is one, you can ask, how much do you spend currently on this problem or a similar problem or need that you have? So if this is going to be a recurring expense, you are looking for a change, then you can ask the customer this question. You can also ask questions like, how much money is budgeted for this problem or need? The other question you can ask is, have you identified the kind of budget that is required for this problem? The other question you could also ask is, who makes the financial decisions? Because this will help you to meet the concerned authority and take things forward. You can either increase the budget if need be by selling more value. This question will help you in that. And then you can also ask a question, sir, you are presently losing X amount of money every month, week or year presently because of what you are using now. When you switch to mine, what kind of budget are you looking to take care of this problem? Or you can also rephrase it like this, when you use my product or solution, you would be gaining X amount of money every week, every month, year. So how does that compare to the investment that you're planning to do? Or you can also straight away ask, sir, is this any return on investment you're looking at when you invest in my product or services? And you can also ask question like, in case you don't buy my product or service, what do you think is going to be the impact on you? How much money will you be losing? Probably over a period of 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. Or probably you can fix the amount and tell, sir, don't you think you would be losing so much of money? So these are some of the questions that you can ask from the prospect to know what his budgets are like. The next is A, which stands for authority. Now, normally in organization, the decision would not be made by one person, depending on the value of the product and the volume. There could be multiple people. One would of course be the purchase team. There would be the finance team involved in who gives the budgets. There would be an end user also. And there could also be somebody like who we call as an influencer, who probably is a little technical person, who the organization has entrusted with the responsibility to study the various products or services which they can use or which is suitable for them. So these are the various peoples who would be involved in a purchase decision, and each of them have a separate role to play. So when you meet each of these authorities, you would have to go repackage the way you present yourself, because the finance person will only look at the ROI part of it, the user will look at the ease of use, the influencer will only see which is best for the organization, and the purchase person will ensure that we are buying from the right kind of person who can take care of the organization interest. So some of the questions that you ask for the authority are: one, you can ask to find the users who will be using the product, who in your team would be using the solution or product, and also ask what are their values or what is the kind of obstacles they are facing, the problems they are facing. And you can also ask them, when is the last time you had this problem and who all were involved in finding a solution for this. And probably the best and simplest way is you can ask the customer upfront, what is your buying process? What is your decision making process? Either of the two words you can use. You can also slightly rephrase it asking who all would be involved in the process. Another question that comes is, you can ask is, how important is this purchase for your organization to meet its goal or the concerned person's goal within the organization? So these are some of the questions that you can ask when it comes to authority. The next is need. So here you would have to do a proper need analysis. When you meet the users or probably any of the authorities, you would have to be very clear what is the need which you are solving. It could be the intrinsic or extrinsic need. It is up to us to find out, so that the customer may not tell it upfront. It goes by only questioning. That's why I said in sales, you need to ask a lot of questions. The customer needs to speak more than us. The average rate is 70 to 30, where 70% of the time customer speaks and only 30% is what you speak. So when it comes to needs, some of the questions that you can ask the customers are: one, when did you identify this problem? How often do you run into this problem? What steps have you taken to address this problem? And with my product or service, what problems are you trying to solve? How important is it to solve this problem to achieve your goals? And you can also ask things like, what are the top priorities at the moment? How does this product or service fit into your long-term goals? So these are some of the questions that you can ask to dig out the needs of the customer. Well, based on the industry you are in and the kind of the industry the customers are in, the questions can change and you can plan out accordingly. The last is T, which is the timeline. So you need to know clearly from the customer as to by when they would take the decision to procure your product or service, because accordingly you can follow up with the customer. Because there are times when they would say, okay, let me take it as a budget. Probably after 6 months, when the board sits, I'll get the approval. So then probably for next 2-3 months, you don't have to go back to them and then again follow it up. And also accordingly, you can also present to your management as to by when you would be able to close the sale. So your trustworthiness within the organization also grows up when you are able to exactly predict by when the sale would happen, and for which the timeline is very important. So some of the questions that you can ask, sir, by when do you want to have this product or service? What is the evaluation process? And where do you see the gaps or hitches coming? And you can also ask the customer like, what is the time constraint you are looking at to procure this product or service. You can also ask questions like, what are the implications if you don't procure it by this time? You can say, sir, working backward from the date you are given. So which means this month by the next 2 weeks, you'll have to release the purchase order so that it takes us a couple of 2 weeks to deliver it to you, the product or service. So that timeline must also be made very clear to the customer. Yes, I will take time, it takes me also time to deliver it to you. And then of course, what is your goal? This is the BANT methodology. So you can redesign it to choose your way. The another process which came slightly out of BANT or towards the 90s is the GPCT model. GPCT, G stands for goal, P stands for plan, C stands for challenges, and T for timeline. Now let's take an example. You are called in by an organization to do a marketing campaign. So simple. You are called in by the organization to do the marketing campaign. So what you would first do is, one, you would understand what is the organization goal for the year. Let's take an example. The goal is to increase the turnover by 1.5x. So, which means they need this year the number of customers to go from 100 to probably 140 to get to that turnover. And from this marketing campaign, maybe out of the 40 new customers they are asking, they might want 20 new customers to come in. So that is how so you know clearly as to what is expected from you in the marketing campaign, knowing their goal. So if you can sit with the customer, work out with them on the goal, and then you can work backward as to what they expect from you. Next is the plan. The customer has to increase his customer base from 100 to 140. So now he would have plans. He would have different plans how he is going to achieve that. There could be, like you are called in to bring in new customers in your marketing activity. They would also have some work which they might do to get additional business from the existing customers, or they would also have other plans. So if you can understand that from the customer by asking questions, the customer will reveal it to you, and you can also know what all extra you can do for the customer. So that's when it comes to the plan. C is, you are going to ask the customer what are the challenges you foresee in the plans, especially the ones that he has given to you. What are the challenges they foresee, and what steps can you put in so that the customer looks at you as the option to take in your service. And of course, last but not the least, T stands for the timeline. So by when they want you to do it, so that you can work backward forward with how soon you need to come with your solution for the marketing campaign. The GPCT model is a little linear, where you go from the goal, then understand the problem, challenge and timeline. You don't go with the challenges and then ask for the goal. So this is a linear model, unlike BANT where you can move from need, then look at budgets and then come in. The other model, which is called as the MEDDIC, MEDDIC. This model is by Jack Napoli and Dave Dunkel. What does MEDDIC stand for? MEDDIC is again a non-linear. M stands for metric. E stands for the economic buyer. D stands for the decision criteria, which is something new. And the second D stands for decision process. I stands to identify the pain, and C stands for champion. Now let's see what do they mean by metric here. Metric, what they mean here is you give the customer a foolproof ROI. You invest this is what is going to be the return. And it is clearly mentioned and given to the customer with proof. And probably you can relate that to his business goals. What does E stands for? E stands for the economic buyer. So here you are only going to focus on the economic buyer. Who's the economic buyer? Because he's the one who can finally decide how much money can be given for this, how much extra, or you can cut the funds for this. So you need to meet the economic buyer, very important. The first D is the decision criteria. Now this is very important. Every organization will have a different criteria to buy. Let's take even a simple example. If they are going to buy a printer for the company. Now some organizations will look only for price, but there are many who would say no, we want a good brand. There would be some organizations who would look, who says I want ABCD features to give me these advantages. Budget may not be the criteria. So each buyer is different. So you need to find out what is the buyer's criteria to buy this product or service. Decision process, like we saw earlier, you're going to ask now who are the people involved and how does the flow happens, who all gets involved in the buying process. Next is identifying the pain area. Now here again, like we saw before, you need to do a need analysis, check out what the customer's pain is and show it to him. Champion, what C stands for. Champion, some people also call him as a guide. In some books it is referred to as a godfather. Depends which way you look at it, but end of the day, he is the one go-to person in the organization who can tell you exactly where what is happening with respect to this purchase. It could be the user, it could be either the financial decision makers or anybody, but there has to be one person who can keep you posted on what is happening with respect to your purchase of your product or service within the organization. This is very important. This is what MEDDIC is. Like for example, if you are going to give look at print as service, so probably you can tell the customer this is what you are spending now and this is what you will spend, this is what you are going to gain, and these are your productivity advantages that you would have. So give it in writing in proof to the customer. So that's metric. Economic buyer is the person who takes care of the finance, who can decide on what the finance is going to be for it. Decision criteria is something that you need to be very clear what the customer needs or what are his criteria to buy a product. Some might look at a big brand, some are okay with small brands, or they need features, or after sales service could play a big part here. So you need to get that clear from the customer. Then of course the decision making process, who all get involved, how the paper moves, and then of course you identify the pain area, and then of course the champion or the guide. This is MEDDIC for you. This MEDDIC got a slight improvement, which is called as the MEDPIC. MED, they added a P there, IC and another C. So a P and C has been added. It's called as MEDPIC. Now what's MEDPIC? Everything is the same. The P in between is the paper process. So some buyers, you need to have yourself registered with them. There could be some legal terms and conditions which you need to fulfill with the customer if the customer has to consider you as a supplier. So that's called as the paper process. So you need to ensure that that need is satisfied of the customer. Only then he will consider you as a buyer. This happens with a lot of customers, especially in the government. You will find this necessary. C, the new C added is competition. Now, needless to say, you need to be very clear who your competitors are. Number two, they just don't have to be your competitors. You also need to see what are the competitive solutions the customer can go in for. He just doesn't have to look at your kind of solution. He might look at a different kind of solution. Your competitor could be a very different ball game. So you need to be very clear on this also. You need to ask the customer and understand from him. So this is MEDPIC. The next process which is commonly used is called as NEAT. N-E-A-T. Well, here the N stands for need, E stands for the economic impact, A stands for access to authority, and T stands for, of course, the timeline. Now, N again, as we saw before, is the need of the customer, both implicit and explicit. You need to do a need analysis, find it out, and probably, yes, you can share it with the customer and then take things forward. So N is a need. E is the economic impact of your product or solution that it is going to give to the customer. So which we have seen it before. That's what E stands for here. Here it clearly means economic impact. which again, like we saw in the M of medic, it's more or less similar to that. A is access to authority. This is very important because like we saw in medic, the champion or the guide, he will help you, he will let you know who all are the different decision making authorities, and he will help you get across to them. So here you need to work out a plan as to how you get across to the various authorities in the game. And T, of course, is the timeline. You need to look at the timeline the customer is going to look for to make the decision, and the timeline you would take to deliver your product or solutions. So this is the need. There are also many others like ANUM is another solution, another kind of prospecting, where A stands for authority, N stands for need, U stands for urgency, and M stands for money. This is more or less covered in all of the previous things, so we will not get into this in length. The other interesting methodology is what is called as SNAP. SNAP selling by Jill. So SNAP is a very interesting prospecting method because actually looks at the sales professional, what is required in him to do it. Like I said before, what the customer expects us is to be empathetic and trustworthy, and SNAP is actually revolves around it, giving it a slightly different outlook to that. What does it stand for? Let us look at it. S stands for keep it simple. N stands for be invaluable. A is always align with the customer. And P is to raise priorities. Priorities is the customer's priorities, not yours. Now, what does it mean to keep it simple? It is very simple. Ensure that all your communication with the customer is in a simple language, because every industry has its jargons which the customer may not understand. So when you ask customers questions or when you discuss with the customer, ensure your language is very simple, words used are simple and to the point. Be invaluable. The customer has to find you as somebody who is knowledgeable and whom he can trust upon because he finds you knowledgeable. So that is what be invaluable means. Always align is you will have to discuss, be aligned to the customer needs, not to your needs. If the customer needs a product or service of the X type, ensure that all your discussions are aligned only to that. Don't try to oversell or undersell. So understanding the customer's need is very, very important here. So raise the priorities means one, focus on the customer's priorities, and number two, you can also show to them that your product or your solution is in line with their priorities and it helps them achieve their goals faster. So these are the different kinds. I mean, there are also several more ways of prospecting. Now that I've given you so many of that, which would cover most of the styles in prospecting, you, depending on your kind of industry and the kind of customer, you can probably look at what all you need to ask the customer to know to take things forward. So the idea behind giving you so many of it is not to confuse you, but that you have so many options to ask from, and depending, again I repeat, on the kind of customer and the kind of industry, you can choose which all I should ask my customers and then probably work on those. In the next episode, we will be looking at a very interesting methodology which has rewritten the way the sales is done across. Because when you use this methodology, you have the other formula, always be closing, will not be there. The customer himself will want to buy from you, and you may not have to go in for a negotiation at all. This will help you prevent. So what is this methodology? We'll see it in the next episode, and if you want to be posted when it comes up, please press the subscription and the bell button. Till we meet again, happy selling, bye bye.